Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into one of aviation's most terrifying and, frankly, miraculous survival stories ever recorded. I want you to try and imagine the unthinkable for a second. Picture plummeting from the sky straight into the dense, unforgiving canopy of the Amazon rainforest, completely lone. It honestly sounds like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, right? But this is a very real, incredibly true story of surviving against literally all conceivable odds. Today, we're going to break down the absolutely harrowing events of the girl who fell from the sky. 20,000. That is the staggering altitude in feet that the subject of our story fell from. To put that massive number into perspective, we're talking nearly 4 miles straight up in the Earth's atmosphere. Imagine an aircraft just breaking apart at that height. There are no parachutes, there's no safety net, it's just a sudden, catastrophic drop into the abyss of the deadliest jungle on the planet. And you know, that altitude becomes even more terrifying when you consider another number, 92. That was the total number of people on board LANSA Flight 508 when disaster struck. 92 individuals. Families, business travelers, friends, all boarding a routine flight fully expecting to arrive safely for the holidays. The stakes of what happened up in the sky that day were absolute, and for almost everyone on board, fatal. But out of that massive tragedy emerges an astonishing, totally gravity-defying outcome. 1. Only a single, solitary survivor emerged from the wreckage scattered across the rainforest. It's a number that just defies logic, doesn't it? It defies physics. And it sets up this awe-inspiring narrative about human endurance that is almost too incredible to believe. So, to understand this miracle, let's flash back to the exact context of that fateful flight. It was December 24th, 1971, Christmas Eve. The flight was heading from Lima to the city of Pucallpa in Peru. Among the passengers was a 17-year-old girl named Juliane. She was sitting right beside her mom, super excited to go spend Christmas with her dad, who was actually a scientist working deep in the Amazon rainforest. But high above the jungle canopy, their routine journey took a horrific turn. The aircraft flew directly into a powerful thunderstorm. A massive lightning strike hit the plane, and the sheer force of the storm literally tore the aircraft apart in midair. In mere seconds, the whole thing just disintegrated. During that chaotic disintegration, Juliane was thrown right out of the aircraft. She plummeted toward the earth, amazingly, still strapped tightly to her row of seats. As she fell through the clouds, she blacked out. When she finally woke up the next day, wow. The brutal reality of her situation set in. She was completely alone on the jungle floor. She had a broken collarbone, cuts all over, including a really deep wound on her arm. Plus, she was at a massive disadvantage in this harsh environment. Her glasses were missing, so she couldn't see well, and she had lost one of her shoes. She was just 17, grievously injured, and in deep shock. Take a second to really grasp the environment she woke up in. No roads, no people, absolutely no rescue teams. Just the terrifying, deafening silence of the endless Amazon stretching out in literally every direction. I mean, this is a place that can be deadly even for the most well-equipped explorers. For a wounded teenager in a torn dress, it was basically a certain death sentence. Which brings us to the most fundamental question of this whole explainer. How exactly do you survive the impossible? Like, how does a heavily injured teenager navigate a scenario with zero rescue coming, no communication with the outside world, and absolutely no survival gear? What tools do you even have left when everything else has been stripped away? Well, unlike most of us who would find ourselves in this total nightmare, Juliane had a secret weapon. She actually knew the rainforest. Growing up with scientist parents, she remembered this one specific, crucial piece of advice from her dad. He told her, if you are ever lost in the jungle, follow water. Streams lead to rivers, and rivers lead to people. This wasn't just a helpful tip, guys. This became her absolute lifeline. It was the psychological anchor that gave her purpose and kept her moving forward when lying down and giving up would have been the easiest thing in the world to do. To cut straight through the pure chaos and terror of the jungle, she adopted a highly procedural survival mindset. It became this simple, non-negotiable 3-step mission. Step 1, find a stream. Step 2, follow that stream until it turns into a river. Step 3, let that river lead you to civilization. In an entirely overwhelming situation, breaking her survival down into these logical, manageable steps was absolutely vital to keeping the panic at bay. And look, this wasn't some quick overnight rescue. Day 1, as we saw, she wakes up injured and completely isolated. Fast forward to day 4, and she's intensely battling hunger and exhaustion.
She had no real food, surviving solely on just a few sweets she managed to scavenge from the crash, and staying hydrated by drinking water straight from the stream. By day 8, things get horrifying. That deep wound on her arm becomes dangerously infected. It gets to the point where insects actually begin living inside it. Every single step was sheer agonizing torture, but she refused to stop walking. Finally, on day 11, after over a week and a half of starvation, pain, and isolation, she discovers a small shelter used by local workers.
Now put yourself in the shoes of those local workers at that shelter. When they finally arrived and saw her, they were utterly shocked. A young woman emerging from the deadly depths of the jungle, her appearance was so unexpected and she was so battered, they initially didn't even think she was human. They actually thought she was something supernatural, like a spirit of the Amazon. But they very quickly realized the truth. She was a survivor from the missing airplane they'd likely heard about on the radio. They instantly sprang into action, fed her, treated her critical injuries, and took her to safety by boat. But Juliane didn't let her story end as a terrified, injured teenager lost in the Amazon. She completely refused to let the immense trauma of Flight 508 keep her away from nature. She recovered, grew up, and eventually became a highly resilient scientist herself, proudly continuing her parents' tradition. She literally dedicated her life to understanding the very ecosystem that she had once been forced to conquer. To really understand the sheer gravity of this event, just look at this. 91 souls tragically perished in that crash, and against them stands Juliane. Just one survivor, that tiny sliver. She was a statistical impossibility brought to life, a single data point that completely defied a 4-mile fall, a massive thunderstorm, and 11 agonizing days in the wild. So as we wrap up the explainer today, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. When facing the impossible, is human willpower our ultimate survival tool? Juliane Kopex's story is this beautiful, awe-inspiring intersection of scientific knowledge passed down from a father and an absolute indomitable human will to survive. It leaves us completely awestruck, honestly. It reminds us that sometimes the human spirit is infinitely stronger than the impossible odds stacked against it. So, what reserves of strength do you think are hidden inside of you? Thanks so much for exploring this incredible story with me today, and I'll see you next time.